Hey everyone, my name's Jason and welcome to the Freedom Adventure. What we have here today is something that I mentioned in my last video, which is our new 24-volt Velit air conditioning setup. It's designed to go under bench, or not necessarily a bench, but just anywhere you want to put it. But where it doesn't go is on the roof. And that was important in our build because we've got a lot of solar panels going up there, and we've got somewhat limited real estate on top of this rig as well. So what I want to do here today is just kind of show you how this unit came, what all was in the box, and just some of my initial thoughts on it. After that, we're going to go ahead and we're going to do the installation and see how easy this really is. Now, the installation in your rig is going to vary wildly from this setup because in ours, the rig is for the most part built. In terms of the infrastructure of the rig itself, everything's already there. So there's a few challenges that I've already come across, and I'll tell you about those moving forward here. But as for right now, this is what we have. All right, so what we've got here is the star of the show, folks. This is the Velit 24-volt underbench AC unit itself. First thing you'll notice is how compact it is. Now, although it is compact, it still has quite a bit of weight to it. Probably weighs about, 34, 35 pounds. These are the two output vents that it's got. This is where it pulls air from the inside of the vehicle, makes it cold, and then comes out of these here. Now, the outer shell is, for lack of better words, it looks like a Sonic cup. It looks like some really, really rigid styrofoam, and I think that's actually what it is. Pretty impressed with the construction overall, although I do have a little bit of concern about moving this thing around and maybe bumping it up against something. As you can see, and this is how it came, the straps actually sort of dig into the side of it, and I think that's by design just to keep those straps from moving around because it is on the back. It's on the front, and but not on these or the strap in the very back. So I'm assuming that was on purpose. Drain tube comes off the bottom here, and just from what little testing I've done with this, I could tell you it pulls an amazing amount of humidity out of the air. A matter of fact, I'm really impressed with it. Even when the air conditioning temperature is not quite there yet, man, the humidity is disappearing fast, folks. These two little wires just go to the control panel, which I'll show you here in just a moment. Okay, now this is the back of the unit. And on either side here, you can see we've got an intake, and on the right side there, you've got the exhaust vent. The intake pulls air from the outside of the vehicle, and the air goes through the machine and then exits, quite warmly exits, I might say, on the exhaust side, and it dumps outside of the vehicle. Now, one drawback some folks might think about this unit is that you do have to drill, or not drill, but cut rather, two 6-inch vent ports somewhere in your machine. Now, that could be the floor, it could be the wall, and in our particular case, it's probably going to be the wall. Moving down here, you see an Anderson connector, which is really pretty trick in my opinion. Now, this goes to the power cable that leads to your batteries. And as you can see, you could just quickly disconnect and connect that. Ease of access for sure. Now, as you'll see on this harness, it's actually got a fuse holder, which I believe holds a 60 amp fuse in line, so you don't have to worry about fusing it anywhere else. It is already done for you. Of course, you just want to make sure that's installed somewhere that you can access it. Now, the one thing I will say is there's somewhere between, and I measured, and it's roughly between about 11 and 12 feet of cable here. Unfortunately, in my application here in this vehicle, the unit's going to go on this side of the vehicle, and of course the batteries are up on the left front. 12 feet was not enough to get me there, guys. I ended up contacting Velit. They told me that this is an 8-gauge wire. So I ordered, I believe, 20 feet of black, 20 feet of red, and I'm going to be constructing an Anderson connector included, but I'll be constructing an extension cord with that here in just a little bit. Now, when we speak about the vents on the outside or going to the outside of the vehicle, this is what Velit gives you. They give you an exhaust. They also give you an intake. Now, these are a two-piece where you sandwich this, basically you sandwich the wall or the floor in between these two pieces. Something I will mention, which is, don't quite understand this, but on the intake vent, as you can see, there is a mesh, presumably to keep bugs and whatnot from getting into the intake. However, the exhaust does not come with that mesh. Not understanding that. And I may end up emailing Velit just to find out if I'm missing a piece, or if that's a piece I could add to it, or for that matter, if it's just not there for airflow reasons, in which case I guess I'll just let it sit as is. Of course, you know, for these vents, what we have here are just some what appear to be stainless clamps, and those hold the hoses to the unit, of course. Now these little L-shaped brackets here, this you could attach this to the side of the unit and secure it down on the floor. What we have over here are basically the ductwork that it comes with. Now the black ones, those are your lines that go to the inside of your vehicle. And then you've got the intake and exhaust, which are approximately 6 inches in diameter, and I believe the black ones are about 2 1/4. One little stumbling block that I was a little concerned about was these black ones don't look very long. Now, the way I'm going to install it today, I think they're going to be okay. I think there's going to be enough length on those. But I was able to email Velit and find out that these can be lengthened out, and I'll talk more about that later in terms of the specifics, how far they can go before the unit becomes inefficient. This harness here is a harness that basically goes to the thermostat control. So this goes from the unit itself up to the thermostat, and I'm not really sure how long that is. It looks fairly long. We're going to find that out here in a little bit. I know it'll get where I need to go, but we will measure it to where you can see if it's right for your application. Moving over here, some other stuff that it came with. One, you've got your thermostat. This, of course, controls the temperature. And these two vents basically go on the inside of your vehicle, and they, of course, just like the air conditioning vents in your car. Not really much to explain there. You guys know how that works. And then, of course, you've got a small bag of hardware, which is all the screws, looks like a barb fitting, some wire ties, and adhesive sticky plates. Something kind of neat they do give you is a cardboard template for your unit itself, just to see, because one thing, and I can tell you this for a fact, is although this is not very heavy, it is a little bit awkward, especially if you're in tight quarters. So what that template does here is basically tells you the footprint it's going to take, to where rather than lugging that unit around and risk damaging the unit, you could figure out if you are in fact going to have room for that or if you're not. Now the other two templates here, and from watching other videos on this unit, I thought there was going to be two of these square ones, but it just came with one. And then you've got this round one here as well. Now, this is the size of hole that you're going to need to cut in either your floor or your wall or wherever your exit point is. And you could do it either with the square or the round. In our case, we're going to be doing the round just to make it as unaffecting to the vehicle as humanly possible. Last but not least, they gave us this, and it's actually a sticker, I think, and I don't know why they chose to do it that way. But it's kind of, it shows you how to add the straps, which this unit does have, and how to add these brackets here, these brackets, to those straps and secure it to your floor. Now, but more importantly, it shows you a couple of different configurations here. This, of course, being the configuration where your exhaust and intake vents go through the floor of your vehicle, and then over here where it goes straight out. Not really sure why they chose to give you a full sheet instructions on how to do that, but it is kind of neat that they did. To begin with, we thought we were going to install the air conditioning unit in this left rear compartment here. And what locked me up a little bit, and you can't see it, but there's a little notch in the side of it. Well, yeah, you can see it. But basically, there was just barely enough room to fit the unit in there and still get those AC vents in order to curve down towards the floor where I wanted those. And it would have been doable if I would have put it on this shelf and then routed the line straight down. But the problem was underneath of this vehicle, there are two straps on the floor that are pretty good sized straps, and I did not want to cut those, and all those are just supports for the floor. That said, we decided to go ahead and put it elsewhere, and by elsewhere, where I mean is on the wheel well on the right side of the vehicle. So there's a little construction that needs to be done, but where I'm talking about is here. Now where that styrofoam board is sitting right there is where this unit is going to sit. There is enough room between there and the bed platform, and ample room going forward. And on what you're seeing on that white piece of wood there, that is actually the cabinet going into our kitchen area, and that is where those lines are going to route through. I am thinking about putting one on the front of the cabinet and then one on the not the north face, the front face of the cabinet that kind of points towards the dinette area. Okay, so now you've got just kind of a rough idea of what this thing comes with and how it goes together. It's time to get our hands dirty and get this installation done. It's Sunday, it's early in the morning. We're going to see how far we can get with this. Stick around and tell me what you think. Okay, so one of the problems here I'm already seeing, and all I'm doing is cutting the base for the air conditioner to sit on, is this piece of plywood I've got is about the last piece of 3/4 inch plywood I think big enough to cut this template out, and for what it's doing, it doesn't need to be pretty by any means. But it's not exactly 100% true. This thing's been sitting around the shop for a while. Got a little bit of the wobblies here, but again, I think for what we're doing, don't really think that's going to matter. So another issue is on the wheel well. There's some bracing, and if you've been following this channel at all for any length of time, you're going to know that there's a lot of bracing in this ambulance. They build them like a, oh, they're solid. They're solid for sure. But as wide as this is, I'm going to have no choice but to actually go up and over one of the braces. So I'm going to have to compensate for that in this piece of wood. Now I'll show you here what I'm talking about. Okay, that brace right there, that dude. So looks to me like that's probably 1/8 of an inch thick. So I think what I'm going to do is go ahead and staple a piece of 1/8 of an inch board to the bottom side of my plywood. That way it sits here fairly nice. Okay, so now that board is cut and we're about ready to go ahead and do that seam seal repair. There is one more thing I've got to go ahead and do before that board gets put in here, and that's going to be drill the hole for the drain line. Now, once again, this thing, it pushes out a ton of moisture. This is just no way this can go into the camper itself. This has to go outside, and that's what we're going to do here is just go ahead and drill a quick hole and use the old handy step bit to do so. Okay, so in one of my previous videos, I was talking about things not to do, and one of them was to get ahead of yourself. And in our case, we went ahead and we built our bed platform first. And as you can see, this is exactly where I'm at right now. Installing this air conditioner is underneath of this bed platform. Not going to go into detail, just going to say hindsight is 2020. As you can see, I've got a very liberal amount of Dicor applied to that crack in the floor there. That should about seal up any problems that we would have in the future with that, but that was something here, once again, that probably should have been done long time before today. So what I've got here is the platform that I made for the wheelhouse, and then I attach these brackets here that Velit includes with the unit, and So it comes with two straps on the unit, which I believe the purpose of those is to actually hold the two halves, the upper and lower half, together. And then it comes with these other two straps, which I believe are intended for these brackets. And you can see they just pretty much screw into the floor. And it came with, I think, 8 brackets, but in my case, I only had to use 4 here. Maybe what their intention was maybe you were going to use a bracket on each one of these straps, but I really don't think that's going to be necessary, so I just used the 4. Anyway, it's looking pretty good right now. I'm going to go ahead and do a quick mock fit into the ambulance here to see how everything works, and go from there. Okay, well, now the air conditioner is mounted on the panel, and I actually used a little bit of foam, 1" by 1" foam sealing tape in order to cushion it from hitting the back of this back storage cabinet here, and just to kind of mount it a little more firmly as well. As you can see, there's room above it, plenty of room in front of it to run the ducts, wiring, got our drain tube hooked up. Everything's coming pretty well now. You will notice there's a pretty good gap right there. And that was on accident. I'd love to tell you that was on purpose, but what I'm actually going to use that for later is to go ahead and sneak a propane line up and into the kitchen. And again, that'll happen later. Kind of glad I did it at this point, because it did save me the trouble of having to drill right there, drill on the back side of the cabinet either way. So the one thing I didn't show is how I attached that wooden platform to the top of that little metal locker there. So what I actually did was I drilled holes in the ceiling of that locker, which was actually this little micro-size storage cabinet out here on the outside. And I used a very, very short screw that was just long enough to anchor into the wood. And you can see the screws up there. And the reason I did that is for ease of removal. Like if I've ever got to take that thing out, even if I disconnect those straps, I've still got to get that thing lifted over top of those brackets, which is not going to be an easy feat because it is limited headroom above there. And not to mention that this unit's pretty much made out of high-density styrofoam, so that just gives me the heebie-jeebies thinking about tearing a corner or a chunk out of that. Not what you want to do with your brand new air conditioner unit, so I just made the platform to where it would remove fairly easy. Okay, so Velit sent a pretty substantial wiring harness for this, and like I said earlier, it's probably about 12 feet long, give or take. It's unfortunate, but it's just not big enough for the application we're using it for here. And so what we're going to end up doing here is I purchased some cable off of Amazon. Also bought a package of Anderson connectors to where essentially, as you can see, the end of it that connects to the unit is an Anderson connector. And what I'm going to do is basically make an extension cord with the Anderson connector on the end of the unit. So ideally it'll plug right in. We're going to see how that works out. My dad let me borrow this little Harbor Freight tool here, which is for compressing 8-gauge fittings on. Never used one of these. Don't know if I'm going to be any good in it, but we're going to find that out here soon enough. You're going to have to excuse the fan that's running right now. The heat is brutal out here today. It is no longer early morning, and it is starting to catch up with me here. So you're just going to have to forgive and forget as far as that goes, guys. Okay, so this cable here runs through that little gap and then goes to our bus bars where the 24-volt power comes off of, goes into the shower area, down through the floor, underneath of the shower, back up through the floor, and then under the restroom. And where it actually comes out to is not quite to the end of the accent wall there. So what I've got to do is create the harness to go from there up and underneath of the bed, and then of course where the Velit is sitting under right over there. All right, so that cable is made. It definitely needs a little bit of flex loom to kind of doll it up a little bit. And we're also going to have to run it and suspend it underneath of the bed platform here. I did make sure I've got plenty of length. I measured that before we cut, measured it about 3 times to be precise. So that's one thing checked off the list of to-dos here today. Power to the unit, check. Got the unit actually mounted down to its base, check. And now we're off to the next project, which is going to be cutting some holes in the backside of the van. Right above the wheeled coach emblem there is approximately where they're going to be cut. About 2 6-inch holes is what's going to happen here. The only other option would have been to go ahead and run these from the back of the unit down there through the floor. And although I do like that idea because you don't see the vents from the outside of the rig, what I don't like is having to give up that much of my cabinet here. So I'm going to take either half of it vertically or half of it horizontally, but not quite half if I use the top, so that's going to be the candidate here. Now we're going to run straight across, and what you see is it's going to go straight across into a beam. And I don't want that. I don't want to attempt to cut through that, so I could either go above it, but once again, that's going to leave a downhill run to the unit. Bad idea for water reasons. Or I'm going to have to go straight across and then slightly down, which is going to be the winner here today, and that's what we're going to do. So it's time to start scribing and marking where these holes are going to be cut. Okay, so between a drill and a jigsaw, we've managed to get a couple of holes cut here for the intake and exhaust to the air conditioner. I probably should have just gone with the circular holes. That way I could have used the perimeter screws. And by the perimeter screws, what I'm meaning are these. There are no provisions here. Basically, if you try to run a drill through these holes, it's too close to the corners and it'll just push right on through. It won't bite into anything. So at this point, I'm forced to go ahead and use the sandwich method here, where you've got the outside, the inside, and then it sandwiches between these. So a little bit perturbed over that, but I'm sure at the end of the day, it's probably something I did. Usually is, but live and learn. So here's the backside, air conditioner, and like I said, it'll go straight forward and then slightly drop in order to vent. We're going to go ahead and get started now, and going to apply some butyl tape. They say to use caulk on this, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the butyl tape that I had used on the ceiling fan and cut it in half to use a smaller amount. I feel like the butyl will work a little better. Plus, if I've got to take these vents out later for any reason at all, I figure it'll come loose probably a little bit better, or easier rather, than the caulking would. So here we go. Well, we have success. Everything is now hooked up with the exception of the interior vents. They're actually plugged into the unit, or the ductwork is plugged into the unit, but they're not mounted in their final install just yet because it's going to require a hole saw that I don't have on me, and frankly, I'm not even 100% sure where exactly we're putting them, but they are hooked up. And the control panel I don't have hooked up either, but you could operate the unit with the remote by itself. So I'll get to that, but I also need to figure out kind of where that control panel is going. The vent on the right, of course, being the exhaust. The one on the left is the intake, so it's sucking in on the left, venting out on the right. This does make me a little concerned because those vents are, shockingly close to each other. Not sure exactly what keeps, hot air from going right into the intake, but it seems to be working. Opening the door, you can kind of see the ductwork going from the AC unit, or the back of the AC unit, over to the back of the vents. I did lose just a little bit of space, but I'll be able to put a shelf up top so I could regain about 8-9 inches up there, and then of course all that room on the bottom still accessible for use as well. Kind of checking things out on the inside. Okay. Not sure how this is going to come out on audio because I'm not, with the AC running, it is not loud in here at all. Now, don't get me wrong. When you turn it off, you can definitely tell it was running, but it's a real low volume. Really, all I'm hearing is just the sound of the air itself. Looking at our little temperature gauge here that I've got rigged up. Right about 60, 61, somewhere in there. And it's only been running for probably about 15 minutes or so at this point. And you're definitely able to tell a difference in here. But we're going to really have a hardcore test here coming up real soon. We're going to pull this thing outside, let the inside of it get scorching hot. And we're going to test probably every 30 minutes, maybe every hour, and see how long it really takes for it to get to temperature. And I mean, I'm starting off at probably up in the 90s at least, because after sitting outside all day, it's really going to be there. So we need to give it a real life test and see what's going on with that. Also, something we need to work at to make this really super efficient is to go ahead and get our door made for the front between the cab and the cabin. And in addition to that, I've also got a big hole right there on the back side of what used to be the oxygen tank, where air is literally just kind of flowing out of the side of that tank as well. For right now, I'm just going to go ahead and block that off with a piece of cardboard or something, with a little notch for that cord for that light I'm using on the inside of the bathroom right now. I'll finish this up. It is about 7 p.m. and I've been out here, guys, since probably about 9 a.m. this morning, maybe a little bit earlier. The actual hookup of the unit, really simple, but everything you've got to do to get it to that point, well, guys, that's just going to depend on your build. In this case, it was quite a bit of work. Definitely worth it though, because man, it's feeling wonderful in here right now. Even if this was as good as it got, just the moisture being pulled out of the air makes one big difference. So yeah, anyway, we're going to finish this up probably another time, probably tomorrow night. Maybe go ahead and get that control panel installed and figure out what we're going to do with the vents. So welcome back for day 2 of the Velit air conditioner install. So far, what we managed to do is get it installed, get the exhaust vent and the intake go ahead, and that's been put in here behind me, as you can see. What remains to be done here at this point is going to be a couple of things. It's one, where are we going to put the thermostat at? And then 2, the interior cooling ducts, and where we want to put them. Our primary choice is going to be run them under the bed platform, through the kitchen cabinet, and then one on the forward-facing part of the cabinet, and then one on the side-facing part of the cabinet. That's our primary choice. We're going to see if that fits. Right now, we're going to have to go ahead and kind of mock fit. The sink's already in there, but we got to mock fit the stove in there just to make sure, if we're going to do this, that the hole is drilled in the right place, and also that we're also not going to take any more room kind of out of the underside of that cabinet than what we have to, because that was intended, at least the left side was intended for a trash can, which we still need, obviously. If there's a way something can have a problem, I'm going to find it. And even something as simple as drilling a hole in a piece of wood to put these AC vents in has presented a problem here. And where the problem is this is a piece of 3/4 inch plywood. And unfortunately, this will not quite go through it all the way and then allow enough room for the backside of it to spin on and lock it into place. I think what I'm going to end up doing here is trying to remove some material from the outside of the plywood, or from the inside, the non-visible side of it. And I don't have to take off much. Like, we're probably talking maybe a 1/4 inch, maybe a little bit more than that. So I'm just going to have to get creative with whatever tools are going to work for the job. And we're going to see how this turns out. But one way or another, we're going to make this work in those cabinets. The vent on this is installed right now kind of from this side, with the back facing this direction right here. And as you can see, there's not many threads showing here. Certainly enough, not enough to get this ring locked on anyway. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and mount this up here. We're going to scribe around it with a pencil and then try to remove as much of this as we can in order to go ahead and get this to recess, at least catch 3 or 4 threads. And once this is locked into place, these, of course, they open, they close. And what I didn't see in this application is I thought that it wasn't going to actually swivel, but it will. They do make them that way, so they're going to add a lot more versatility to our application. Having that flexibility is going to help, especially in a small place. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and get that put in and get this into position here, at least where I think it's supposed to go. And this doesn't have to be surgical by any means, but what it does need to do, because I'm probably going to take a little more off than what's going to be scribed just for clearance. All right, that looks like just probably about 1/8 of an inch around the opening. Yeah, I don't think that'll be too difficult. I think what I'm going to use is an angle grinder with like probably a 40 grit roll lock, maybe a 50 grit. I don't know. It's just whatever I've got down there. But what we'll try to do is just kind of run around this line here and remove some of this. And this is just a test piece of wood, obviously, before we get over there to the actual cabinet itself. I got a lot of work in those, and I want to make good and sure that I don't booger those up. So far, I can say the radius of this wheel almost matches perfectly to the radius around here. So this is coming out pretty nice. Oof, nothing like the smell of burnt plywood here. Lovely. Now, one thing to mention, this is clamped really nicely in a vise. This isn't going to be the way it is in the camper. I might be able to move it around, maybe lift it over onto its side, but I'm not going to have this much access, so it's going to be a whole lot more of a challenge in the camper. All right, well, it certainly looks like there's enough thread here to catch. Oh yeah, there we go. Oh yeah, that's nice. And I didn't have to go in and take too much off of there either. So yeah, I think that's going to be what the doctor ordered there. That'll work. You know, one thing I've learned during this build is to hyper focus on how equipment works with other equipment. You know, when you're in an RV and it's already built, you know, it's real easy to see how things coexist with each other, like your trash can hitting the bottom of your sink or just, you know, whatever. In this case, like I said, it's important to hyper focus on everything because I've made a lot of mistakes along the way. Get things put in, they don't work well together. You've got clearance issues and just things of that nature. So something to keep in mind for your own build. This is the cabinet that I was talking about here, and we're going to put one vent on the front face here, and then one kind of under the sink area on that broadboard right directly below the sink. The stove here is not installed yet. It's just in there for a mock fit. Like I said, it's important to make sure that everything works well together before you start installing things. Also, something to mention is this is a Rec Pro stove. It's a propane powered stove and it's only a 2-burner, but for the size rig we had, we figured it was plenty adequate. We'll do the install video on that here coming up fairly soon. For what it is, I'm pretty impressed with it. And you know, compared to some of the other stoves, it certainly isn't the best. But for our application, I think that it is. All right, the view you're seeing here is underneath of the stove in the cabinet. So what we've got to do is just make sure that our vent is probably as high up here, as close to the belly of that stove as possible, just to allow for as much room from that point down in order to put our trash can and just whatever else we decide to put in there. And then, of course, over on this side, quarters are getting a little bit tighter, but I think it's still workable. We'll just have to stretch that duct out about as far as it'll go and see if we could get it hooked to the backside. If nothing else, we can go ahead and extend these ducts as well. All right, we're down to brass tacks now. Ready to get a hole saw and drill into the face of the cabinet. You may not be able to see it from there, but moving forward there, you can see where I've scribed off the line. Measured once, measured twice. Probably going to take a quick third look at it before I grab the drill. Wish me luck. Success. Nice and neat. I'll show you how tight tolerance it is on the inside. As you can see, it's pretty close to both the top board and the sideboard as well. But I left enough room to go ahead and hog off that wood, which is what's coming next here. Mission accomplished. Hole is in place, and we got it chewed out on the backside. And the vent is in, as you can see. Looking at the backside, you can kind of see what that looks like as well. Okay, one more hole to drill, and this one will be on the front face of the cabinet. Once again, we're running tight tolerances with the bottom of the stove, but that's okay. Well, we'll try this. It doesn't look quite right, but nope, that'll work. Okay, there it is. There's the back side, and you can kind of see close up. What I did is just kind of grind the edges of that to bring it down a level or two so it'll slip in, and it did. As you can see, the cabinet is divided by a center wall, and then down there where it goes, where you can see that black duct going underneath of it, that goes right to the Velit. Now, I think it's better to have a straight shot right out of the nozzles of the Velit coming through, so I'm probably going to drill a couple of holes through that wall to where it's more of a straight run horizontally, straight from the vents of the Velit straight over. And then I'm going to have to come up and through that wall, curve over and into that vent. And that shouldn't be a big deal. Hopefully I've got enough ductwork to do it. I've got this thing stretched out about as far as it goes, and man, I think there's enough there, but I guess we're going to find out. To give you an idea what I was talking about, you can see those vents on the Velit. Oh, you can see one up there and then one down, the one that's hooked up. So rather than dip down and then back up, which would probably restrict airflow, at least to a degree, I'm going to go ahead and drill one hole here on this, and then probably another one going through that as well. These don't have to be huge. I've got a 2.5 inch hole saw, and this ductwork is 2.25 inch. Okay, there you have it. We have the 2 holes that I was telling you about going to the ducts coming out of the Velit. Last thing to do is just to drill one more hole right through the top of the cabinet there, and that hole will lead the duct going over to the forward facing vent. Ducts are in now, and this may not be where they actually sit at the end product, because there's still a lot of things that have to be put in, but for right now, man, they look pretty good, and there was plenty of length, at least in this application. The sink and the stove are back in position now, and everything's looking good. There's no interference problems. I'll kind of crawl down here real quick and show you how it looks. Underneath there, we route right underneath of the stove belly as far as that vent goes. It cuts through the side. Over here, you've got 2 pipes, one going to the forward facing, and then one coming up here to the back of the side facing vent. And in terms of clearance, everything came out excellent, actually. Matter of fact, it probably gave us the most room we could hope for, still in the cabinet after running them. The air conditioner is now running. It doesn't take very long before you could actually feel an effect. I mean, compared to the temperature it is here in the AMBO here today, it's definitely blowing a lot cooler coming out of these vents for sure. And I mean, obviously that's the point, but I mean, what I'm saying is it starts taking effect pretty quickly. At this point, I've got the doors open because I've been working out here without air, so for right now, I'm going to go ahead and just let it run for a bit. The thermostat, frankly, I don't know where I'm going to put it yet, and I did measure the cable that it comes with, and it goes down to the Velit unit itself. Comes with a pretty neat little box here in order to mount that in. So you could either flush mount it in a wall, or you could use that box. One of the installations I saw, he actually mounted it underneath of the cabinet, kind of right there where I'm showing you. I don't know. There's, it's a small rig. There's only so many places to put it at, so it may end up going on a wall somewhere above the sink over here. It may end up getting flush mounted here on the end of this cabinet. I don't know. We'll see. Well, the air conditioner's installed. There's a few final things that I've got to do, including kind of a drain tube extension. Right now, where it's dripping, it's hitting a leaf spring, it's following the leaf down to the center of it, and it's dripping out behind my wheel. If I don't do something different with it, it's going to make life kind of miserable on the campsite of the rig. So we're probably going to end up just extending that tube and routing it over here towards the passenger side. Other than that, though, all that really remains here is to just do a couple final things on the cabinet. But since I've got to take the cabinet out in order to do the paintwork and the doors on it, we've really gone about as far right now with the install as we can. But at this point, we have air conditioning, and it works pretty doggone well. Now, today, only 85 outside, and right now in the AMBO, I believe we're looking at about 73. I don't know what to expect when it gets hot, but we're going to find that out a little later. Right now, it's very non-humid in here, and it feels just glorious right now, guys. For real, it's amazing. Now, a couple things just to kind of go over before we end the video. Shipping expectations, right? When I went to order this thing, originally I was looking on Velit's website, and Velit's website said that it was about a 6 to 8 week back order period. And so I just put it off. We had other things to do on the ambulance build. Not a big deal. I'll just wait, right? So we waited about 2 months more, and then it's time. It's getting hot outside. It's time we do something. So went ahead and ordered it. Now, when I went to Velit, it still said it was on back order. So I thought, well, let me look at some other places and see if they stock the Velit machine. And I found a company called Nomadic Supply Company. And Nomadic showed to have 4 of them in stock. So, hey, why not? It's the same price. Looks like the same deal. So let's go for it. So I ordered it from Nomadic. Now, in hindsight, turns out Nomadic Supply actually builds Velit machines. I was ordering it from the same company. But I will say this. The day after I ordered it, I got a notification that the FedEx shipping label had been printed. I was ecstatic. I'm thinking, great, man, this thing's going to ship hopefully tomorrow or the next day, and I ought to have this thing here within a week. I figured a week was realistic since Nomadic Supply Company and shipping warehouse is actually in Ontario, Canada. A couple days go by, nothing. So I message in. There's a little spot on the ordering area. You can message in with questions, concerns, whatever. So I did. And I was like, hey, listen, I'm not trying to hurry, but for all practical purposes and just planning purposes, I need to know kind of when this is going to ship. And guys, I'm still waiting on a freaking answer from that message. Why put that there if you're not going to answer me? If you're just going to ghost me, then why even offer it, right? It was about 4 or 5 weeks later that I got a notification. Actually, I think they asked me and said, hey, listen, we're shipping your unit. Will you fill out a survey for us? And at this point, I was pretty upset with that because I haven't even got my machine yet, and they're asking me for a survey. I haven't even seen a comment or an answer on the question I had, like 5 weeks earlier. After that happened, I did get a shipping notice, and I want to say it took about a week from that point to get the unit to my doorstep. I don't know, once again, I don't know why Nomadic would put that option there if they're not going to honor it and they're just not going to help you when you've got a question. But what I did discover is on Velit's website, there's a chat feature there. So once I got the unit in, I had a couple of questions that needed to be answered, and I was able to actually type in on the chat. And okay, so rewind here just a little bit. When I very, very first started looking at the machine, I was using that chat feature through Velit, and it was usually the following day, but I would get an answer. And that's why it was so disgusting to me that Nomadic didn't answer my questions. Long story short, Nomadic and Velit, same company. If you're going to try to correspond with them, however, use Velit's website and use the chat feature because you'll get an answer. Typically, well, I've never actually gotten a respond on the chat, but you enter your email address in and then they shoot you an answer with that. And that worked out pretty good. Almost always by the end of that day or by the next day, I've had an answer. A few of the inquiries that I did use that chat feature for were a few different things, right? The cord that they give you to power this rig in my application wasn't long enough, so I had to actually build another extension cord. So when I chatted in, I wanted to find out how big that cord was, and of course they answered me within 24 hours, and they said that you're going to want to use an 8-gauge power cable to extend that out. Excellent. So that's exactly what I did. Whenever I went to install this, where I thought I was going to install it, there just simply wasn't enough room over there, and I ended up having to go an alternate route. My questions were this. On the vent side ducting, the ducting that goes from the unit to the outside of the vehicle, how long can I run those? Same question on the inside ducting. Now, Velit, they were telling me it's 5 foot on the vent side or the outside portion, and on the inside, you can do up to 10 feet. I had watched a review video from John Daniel 1 on YouTube. He actually replied to me first because I went ahead and I figured this guy did a really deep dive on this unit, so I'm going to ask him because he'll probably know, right? And he did. So he said on the outside ducting, the portion that goes from the unit to the outside, you could actually go up to 6 feet. My issue though really was how long can I make these inside ducts, the little ones that blow cold air into the unit, or into the rig rather, and Velit is saying 8 feet. John Daniel, however, had a different opinion. He's saying you can take those up to about 10 feet. And he said if you do that, however, by no means do you want to have any harsh turns or really extreme turns, probably 90-degree angles. You don't want any of that. And if you can, you need to wrap those pipes in some sort of insulating material. The longer you get, the more insulation you're going to need. And in my case, I'm probably going to go ahead and insulate those anyway, just with some pipe insulation, just to get every bit of efficiency out of this unit that I can. So thanks, John Daniel, for responding. Velit did give me an answer, but you came through first, man. I do appreciate that. Also in the video, I mentioned that I was going to go ahead and measure the harness, this harness here, that goes to the thermostat housing, and I did, and it's approximately 8 feet. I think for most people that's probably going to be pretty good. I think you could find somewhere in the vicinity within 8 feet of the Velit unit, and that's probably going to be adequate. Worst case scenario, I guess if you had to cut some wires and extend them, then you could, but 8 feet should work pretty good for most. Something else that I sent into Velit with a question, and again, they got back with me within a day. You heard me on the video. The vent covers on the outside, there's one that's got a mesh, which is the intake, and then the other one doesn't. Now, my concern was, why did one have it and one didn't? Am I missing a piece? What's going on here, right? So what Velit's answer to that is we don't put one on the exhaust side because we don't want it to hinder the airflow of the hot air getting out of the unit. That could cause troubles with the unit. Now, that was my speculation, but once again, it was awesome to get that answer back from them just to know for sure and just reassure me that I wasn't missing a piece to the unit. Going back to John Daniel 1, I just want to say this guy has done some remarkable review videos, and he is really the reason that my wife and I decided to go with the 2000U, the 24-volt version of this underbench air conditioning unit from Velit. He goes and does a deep dive into this machine, man. I mean, it's like unreal in terms of the specs that you get on it. If you really just want to nerd out on this stuff and you want to know the current draw, the wattage, the airflow specs, and everything about it, this man actually takes it physically apart to do the test, and he shows you everything you're going to need to know. I will never do a review video like that on this machine because I don't frankly think I can do it any better than what him and the young lady that shoots his videos with him, I don't think I could do it any better than that. I'm going to put that link to that video though in the comment section, because if you're really wanting to find out some deep information about this unit, man, that is the best place to get it. Once again, he is probably the biggest reason that I went ahead and went with this particular unit. I wanted to keep the height off of the roof rather, so I could still park this rig in our shop, which has got, I think it is a 10-foot door when you drive inside of it. Final thoughts before we get done here, and these are just some random final thoughts. The unit that we went with here is a 24-volt version of the unit. Now, the 24-volt unit is a little bit more efficient than the 12, and that's why we did that. So we kind of built our solar setup on 24-volt even before we purchased this, because we knew that this was going to be the one that we would purchase. Also, the 24-volt unit is a 9,000 BTU unit, whereas the 12-volt, if you choose to go with that, it's still an amazing machine, but it is actually only 8,000 per the specifications. The trick thing about the underbench unit, like I said, though, is that there's nothing on your roof. If you're trying to keep a stealth look, maybe you're covering your roof and solar panels, and that's important to you. The underbench unit's pretty awesome. Folks, that's all I've got for you here today. I just wanted to say thank you for coming to the channel, and if you've made it this far, thank you very much. It's obviously something, if you've made it this far with me, it's obviously something you're into, so if you like it, please like and subscribe. I really hope that what I'm doing here, showing you this build, has offered some value to you. Thank you very much for watching. Happy adventures, and I really hope to see you next time. Take care, y'all.